So let's get into it. We are talking about CSIS, former CSIS agent, and another former CSIS director. I believe his name was, it's escaping me now. But the former agent, we're talking about his testimony, and we have footage here for you. It is damning stuff, I gotta say, guys. It is real bad. So before we play the video, very quickly, let's look at this headline. And this is a direct quote right here from the CSIS agent. I want to be very clear. We can prove that every federal government from Mr. Mulroney to Mr. Trudeau has been compromised by agents of Communist China. That's from the National Post. So let's start off quickly now that we've got a couple of people here. Let's start off with our very first clip. Listen to this man. This is only 30 seconds. Listen to his testimony. Listen to his words. And ask yourself, if the people of France are going to riot on the streets to take their government back over quote-unquote pension, what are Canadians going to do about this?
With a signed declaration, with the threat of criminal proceedings, what sanctions would you propose in terms of the criminal proceedings? How strong of a jail time?
Because we're close to treason here, literally. So I say jail time. Now the size of the jail time would be judged by jurisprudence and by our system, but definitely jail time.
There you go. Definitely jail time. Those are strong words, and this is not a reporter. This is not a political guy. This is not a donor guy. This is a former CSIS agent. He's former RCMP, and then he transitioned to CSIS. He worked in counterterrorism. He has a very decorated career. Okay, those are extremely strong words to hear from someone who worked in Canadian intelligence. CSIS, Canadian Securities Intelligence Services, is essentially the FBI, the CIA, or the NSA, kind of all in one, I suppose. If you're American, or if you're more familiar with their acronyms. They tend to go with 3 letters. For some reason, we got 4. I think that has something to do with the crown. Anyways, you notice our cops, RCMP, right? 4. So jail time. That was his recommendation. Jail, and he didn't mince words. Those were the first thing. What is your recommendation? Right off the bat, boom, jail time. Elisa has got a very good question. Why hasn't there been no arrests? Well, here in Canada, the RCMP swear their oath of allegiance to their politicians. So you can't count on the RCMP to arrest a politician. That's not even the structure of how it works here in Canada as they're sitting. The fact that ever since Brian Mulroney, which is the 90s, possibly even late 80s, if my memory serves correct, but at the very least 90s, since Brian Mulroney's government, CSIS has been warning each new government and their members of Chinese interference, of the Chinese collusion, interference, the whole 9 yards, the bribery, everything. And since Mulroney, every single government has been either ignoring or making use of CSIS's warning. Making use of. Now, see, they didn't heed the warning and prevent it. They made use of it in terms of profit. And just so we're clear, the former CSIS agent says the exact same thing. So after he's done saying jail time, and I know we've got new members, we'll recap all this, but after he's finished saying jail time, this is what he goes on to say.
Chinese operators. It is also caused by our own candidates, elected official, political staff that are either naive or calculate intentionally to gain power with the assistance of the Chinese government. The Chinese intelligence service are so good at it because they understand the electoral system, the weakness of the human being, and their work is on long-term gain. So today, I want to be very clear, and I want to be very clear. We can prove that Every federal government, from Mr. Mulroney to Mr. Trudeau, have been compromised by agents of the Communist China. Every government were informed at one point or another. Every government chose to ignore CSIS warning either by negligence, self-interest, or partisanship. Every government were infiltrated by agents of influence acting on behalf of the Chinese government, and we knew who they were. Every government took decisions that are questionable about China and can only be explained by interference exercised from within or motivated by self-interest. Not only the sitting government have been compromised, but all federal political parties have been compromised at one point or another. The inaction of the federal government, all federal governments, were led to attacks on many municipal and provincial governments. Ultimately, every government has been part of the problem, not the solution. And remember, not only China is practicing interference.
And remember, not only China is practicing interference. But guys, think about the words. Again, this is an intelligence officer. Every single government since Brian Mulroney has been compromised and infiltrated by agents of the Chinese regime. And we, as in CSIS, because this is CSIS talking, we knew who they were, and each government had been briefed on this, and each government chose to ignore it based on things like self-interest. This is, treason, again, and he says it in one of his quotes. Now, let me ask you, we've got 20 people here live right now. If you're listening, what is it going to take for Canadians to do what's happening in, say, France or the Netherlands? Apparently, France is rioting over pensions. I don't believe that. I don't think most of you do. But either way, they are rioting. Paris is a gong show. And the footage coming out of it is promising, is the best way to put it. Now, Canada just went through some of the strongest COVID mandates ever. Like Canada and Australia were hand in hand in terms of the strictness of COVID regulations. The tyranny that went along with that and the vaccine mandates, all of it, the trucker convoy, every bit of that. And now we're looking at proof from our own intelligence agency that every party and every government since Mulroney, guys, that's my whole life. Every government since Mulroney has been compromised and infiltrated by agents of the Chinese government. Those are not mincing words. That is dire, dire straits. We as Canadians need to do something. This has nothing to do with partisanship. This has nothing to do with COVID, with vaccines. This has nothing to do with left, right, Pierre Poilievre, Justin Trudeau, Maxime Bernier. It has nothing to do with any of that. Every government and every party since Brian Mulroney has been compromised and infiltrated. What part of this do Canadians not understand? What is it going to take for you to understand that the governments have never been for you? It doesn't matter who you elect. They create a problem so that they can offer a solution. That's been the pattern since the dawn of time. It's only when you and I come together, the only us versus them, there's no left versus right. There's no white versus black. There's no gay versus straight. Whatever false binary you can come up with doesn't exist. It's a false binary. The only us versus them that ever existed, that still exists to this day, and will exist until we come together, us versus them, is people versus government. We're allowing our governments to get way out of hand with how we operate. A government is supposed to be hired by you to do your bidding, to represent you. It's not supposed to be an entity that operates at its own will. These people, and it doesn't matter, again, guys, it's not orange, red, blue, purple. That's not how it is. All of those colors are on the same flag. And your colors are not on it. 70% of China's diplomats in Canada are part of intelligence gathering work and should be sent home. Guys, 70% of their diplomats in our country should be sent home, according to our intelligence service. Why is our government not only not listening to them, but then working in opposition to that information and working closely with the people they're being warned about? Could it possibly be that they don't have your best interest in mind as a Canadian? It's a possibility. And I think Canadians might want to start considering that. So, as we wrap up for this evening, guys, we're sure that Canadians understand, ever since Brian Mulroney, our government, this is 30 years, guys. Ever since Mulroney, every government has been compromised and infiltrated by members of the Chinese communist regime. They are working actively, and they're good at their job, to subvert our democracy, to subvert our culture, and to take control of Canada. Why do you think Chinese business is allowed to flow in here essentially unfettered? And it has been forever. What? Go back to the 90s now and find out, wow, look at all the Chinese people that were coming into BC in the 90s and early 2000s. I wonder why that happened. Well, it's because 70% of the Chinese officials in Canada are actively working with the Communist Chinese Party to subvert Canada. Do you get it now? And this is being allowed actively by our governments. So much so that they're being warned about it by their intelligence agencies and they're ignoring it. These people, every single one of them, should be up on treason charges right now. And that's not me exaggerating. That's a former CSIS agent saying it. Every government since Brian Mulroney has been infiltrated and compromised by the Chinese regime, and we, CSIS, knew who they were, and we briefed every one of them on it, and they ignored you, and they committed treason against you. They have been doing so since the establishment of this country, and our own intelligence agencies are trying to tell us, guys. Think about it. Let it set in. 70% of the current agents or operatives in China are actually operatives of the CCP. And CSIS knows who they are. And our governments, liberal and conservative, keep getting briefed on it every single time they're elected. And they know who they are. And they keep actively ignoring it and committing treason against you, the people of Canada, the people they're supposed to represent, and they keep getting away with it. When is enough? What is enough? When is enough enough? When do Canadians unite and stand up? That's my final question, and I'll leave it at that for tonight. Thank you for tuning in, guys. It's been a pleasure. Look for us again over the weekend. I hope you guys have a fantastic Friday. Happy Freedom Friday. And as always, you people, you stay sovereign, okay?